What's up, everybody? Welcome back to More Gutty, More Gory, Episode 2. My name is Billy. Today I want to talk about another favorite scary movie of mine. Come on. Demon Night. Demon Night stars William Sadler as Frank Breaker and Billy Zane as the Collector. Now, this movie is a supernatural element, but it's a Tales from the Crypt movie. So it's the first full-length feature from the Tales from the Crypt franchise. This movie's awesome because it's about basically the universe has 7 keys, and with these 7 keys is controlled by the darkness, and the darkness being demons, and all of these keys have been scattered throughout the universe. Now, of course, just so happens the 7th key is on Earth, and Breaker happens to be the chosen one to defend this last key. So being a Tales from the Crypt movie, John Cassier obviously voices the Crypt Keeper, and that alone makes this movie worth watching. Jada Pinkett Smith is also in this movie. This is one of her earlier works. She stands out significantly in this movie and does an excellent job. So for the beginning of this review, I'll just go into the plot and then give some of my favorite lines, and later I'll do some of my favorite scenes, which may give away some spoilers. But in the beginning, I'll try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. The reason I recommend this movie is because it's an all-around great horror movie. It has excellent special effects, very cool, fun acting, and the lines have a lot of humor, but there is some very, very terrifying elements to the movie that make it really scary, just in context. It's about, a collector, which is the higher lord of demons, and they're coming to try to collect this key, and so they wreak havoc on these 7 or 10 inhabitants of this hotel that are all kind of trapped in this one night. So Demon Night does have a great blend of humor and scares. John Cassier with the Crypt Keeper in the beginning obviously is going to have plenty of humor, but Billy Zane provides most of the humor throughout the whole movie, and he's the villain in a sense to the movie, so it's kind of cool having him be the villain but also providing the humor. So I'm going to go over some of my notes to break down some of the characters. But William Sadler plays Frank Breaker, and he's basically the burdened hero that has to try to survive the night and save these people from being taken over by the Collector and his legion of demons. Jada Pinkett plays Geraldine, who's a girl that's on work release in this hotel that these characters get trapped in. Roach is one of the bad guys, basically, of the bunch. He's egotistical, but he does provide some comedy within the characters. Cordelia is a damsel in distress, basically. Wally is fond of Cordelia, but he ends up being kind of just a friend character. Breaker, obviously, is the hero. And Uncle Willie is another comedic character. He's kind of like the old drunk of the bunch. And then you have Irene, who is the caretaker of the hotel. So she is basically in charge of running this whole business. And you might be noticing that the spiritual connection between my last review of Fallen and this one, that basically was coincidence. I just like both of these movies, and they happen to have a similar supernatural element to them with demons. But these demons are definitely more of a mythical sense. So these characters have to not only deal with these lower level demons who are trying to get in to this place that they're at to take over them and basically eat them. They have to fight off the temptation of Billy Zane, and he does an excellent job trying to manipulate each character against their own personal weakness. So one way I would describe Demon Night, it's basically a horror comedy fan service film. The reason I would call Demon Night a fan service film is because the scares are really over dramatic, and there is some gratuitous moments in this movie, but if you can handle the blood and gore, the gratuity should not be a problem, because we're all adults, watching these movies, I would hope. Before I get into some of my favorite lines and spoilers from my favorite scenes, if you haven't seen Demon Night, definitely check it out. It's killer entertainment, a lot of fun, a lot of action, a lot of awesome practical effects. And you can't go wrong with the Crypt Keeper. So I would definitely check out Demon Night if you haven't seen it. It's a lot of fun. And speaking of the Crypt Keeper being a staple within the horror genre, I just happened to come across this bad boy. Has all of the DVDs from the Tales from the Crypt franchise. So I'm going to have a fun night, week, month watching all those, it'll be cool to see how they differ from the movie in terms of the storytelling and the practical effects. But the Crypt Keeper alone will be more than enough entertainment to enjoy that whole box set. A fun aspect of Demon Knight is the key itself. So being the last key of the 7 that the collector is trying to find, it all has to line up on the Demon Knight. So the Demon Knight also spelled in the sense that Breaker is the knight defending the people against the demons, but it also refers to being, once certain elements happen, Demon Knight will then begin. With the number 7, there are 7 keys, so there has to be 7 or at least 7 people within one given area on this night. And then once Billy Zane's character, the Collector, confronts Breaker or can catch him or find him, being the protector, then the Collector will provoke 7 demons to try to conquer all of these people to get the keys. So the numerical metaphor with the 7 obviously has to do with like 7 sins and 7 virtues. And that's just a cool little fun religious element that they threw into the movie to give it more significance. So throughout this movie, the Collector tries to tempt the people within the hotel to turn against the people inside the hotel by making them demons and possessing them. So he has to do that in very specific ways to cater towards each character's weakness, and Billy Zane's acting abilities within these scenes, changing different characters and different aggressions and different subtleties and sensitivities towards these other characters, makes his acting ability in this movie incredible. Billy Zane's character brings upon his legion of demons to fight during this Demon Night, and those characters are very cool looking. They have a very skinny and almost, they look like the Crypt Keeper basically, but life size. Even better, when Billy Zane tries to tempt some of the other characters and possess them, when he turns them into demons, they look more like Venom. Maybe it was inspired by Venom, but it is very cool and terrifying. Another cool element of the key is that there's blood in it, and the blood is ancient. Some of it can be traced back to Jesus, but most of it is from other protectors in the past up until now who had to sacrifice themselves in order to maintain the key's power. The blood inside the key is what Breaker has to use to protect those inside the house by creating a blood seal around the doors and windows, so when the lower level demons try to cross into the plane, they explode. So the practical effects of those situations is awesome. So I'm going to get into some of my favorite lines and favorite scenes. There may be some spoilers coming up, but anytime Billy Zane has a line in this movie, it's entertaining. With either puns or just the way he tries to manipulate people. He tries to seduce Jada Pinkett's character, Geraldine, and he's trying to convince her that he's in love with her. So he can't say the word love because he's a demon, so he doesn't believe in love. One of my favorite lines comes from Irene's character, who's the caretaker of the hotel, and she gets her arm broken off by one of the demons, and Billy Zane's character tries to seduce her by basically showing her her arm, saying he can give it back to her. He makes a pun about her arm being a poached appendage, and for starters, he recommends the finger foods, and she basically does that, and he says, "So is that a yes?" And she says, "No, that's me giving you the finger." And so that's a great line from the aspect of her humor, given the fact that she lost her arm. Now I'm going to get into some of my favorite scenes. The first one would be the opening fake, which is almost like Scream 4. It's a movie within a movie, but that's how you introduce the Crypt Keeper. So he introduces the movie after they have a kind of like a fake scare scene in the opening, which is a lot of fun. That's part of the gratuitous moments within the movie, but it sets the tone for the humor and the scariness. Also, the opening scene is one of my favorites because it has a cameo in there. I don't want to give the cameo away, but there's a cameo within the opening scene that provides a little entertainment to it that you wouldn't expect. So for another favorite scene of mine would be Heads Up, and this has to do when Billy Zane is resurrecting his demons. Before he gets to that stage, he gets in a fight with the cops who are trying to take him and Breaker back to the police station. But the collector realizes that he needs to create this demon knight now, because this is where all the characters are in the same place to have the minimum of 7 to create the demon knight, and this is his best chance to get the key from Breaker. So he punches a cop through the face and rips his head off, and then throws the head at Breaker and says, "Heads up!" So that was a great pun by Billy Zane and the writers, and his delivery within that line is a lot of fun. But the scene after that leads into where he resurrects his legion of demons, and the special effects in creating those demons is very cool. As I mentioned before, there's a blood seal on the doors and the windows, and when the demons try to break through, they explode. So those scenes are all very impressive. Demon Knight does have some gratuitous moments in the movie, and one of the best scenes is Willie's possession, is when he walks into one of the hotel rooms and it turns into a brothel. And this is the moment where Billy Zane's character tries to seduce and turn Willie's character into a demon by providing him with a room full of girls. That scene will play out as you would imagine. But it's a lot of fun and entertaining, and Billy Zane's puns within the scene are very hilarious. The character development within this movie is a lot of fun and entertaining, and they do a good job setting up each of these characters and having them have relationships within this movie, given it only takes place in one night. They do a good job showing the history of some of these people and getting into the deeper flaws that these characters have, and you root for them to survive. But as the movie progresses and Billy Zane's character as the collector starts to possess some of them, you then start to root for Billy Zane, because when they turn into demons, it's so epic that you just kind of want to see all of them turn into demons and see how the rest of the characters are going to fight against them. And they do a good job with the practical effects and to make it look terrifying, that it's highly entertaining for the audience. Breaker's character has 7 stars on his hand, and given the key, there's 7 stars on the key. So these stars kind of move around on his hand, and once they make a certain formation, that lets him know that the Demon Knight is going to begin. Given this is Jada Pinkett's earlier roles, you kind of don't suspect that she's going to be one of the chosen ones, but as the movie progresses, you kind of see she's the strongest character. So 2 characters I want to highlight that had pivotal roles and cool arcs were Bob and Irene. Bob being the goofy cop, and he kind of has a clumsy and silly persona to him in the beginning, but towards the end he becomes more of a leader and he takes charge, and that's a cool arc to see what they did with his character and how he got there throughout this movie. Given the circumstances that they're in, he could have just given up, but he decided to take control, and that was really cool to see him do that. And then also Irene, her character as the caretaker of the hotel, and she's kind of the boss of everybody, and is used to controlling people and what they do. And in this situation, she loses control. So her arc goes from kind of being in charge to understanding that she has no control over the situation. So both her and Bob make the decision to sacrifice themselves. And it was cool to see how their arcs kind of cross paths, and they kind of both came to the same decision, but on different terms, and were both, heroes for doing what they did to try and save everyone else. So it was really cool to see how they played that out. So another interesting detail of this story that shouldn't be overlooked is how the weakness of the demons is in the eyes. So you can punch them, you can stab them, you can shoot them, nothing will hurt them until you stab them or shoot them in the eye. And then their eyes will explode out in a jolt of lightning or electricity or something. And if that hits somebody, it could hurt them very badly or potentially kill them. So it's kind of cool because it's kind of like the power lies within the eyes. Same with the phrase like the soul is in the eyes. So these demons try to take over and possess people. And if they do become possessed, then the only way to kill them is to stab or shoot them in the eye with a sharp object. And speaking of how the power lies within the eyes, it makes sense that the collector would not be able to be killed by a stabbing or a shooting to the eye, because he's more of a mythical creature, and he summons the rest of the lower level demons who are basically lost souls. And the collector is a combination of all of the souls within the whole universe, basically. So it makes sense that it would take something of more sacred power to destroy him. And we find this out with Geraldine when she spits in his eye. She spits the blood that's in the key, which is from, God or Jesus or some higher power, right in his eye. So it makes sense that that would be enough to destroy him and have him burst into flames. And it's cool how the key protects Geraldine from the explosion at the end. You kind of see her glowing after the flames dissipate. And to some that might be an easy, lazy writing way out, but given the strength and the blood seal mentions from the windows and the doors, having the key would protect her from any of those outside sources that would be caused by the darkness. So I like the ending in the sense that when Geraldine spits blood in the face of the collector, that was foreshadowed earlier in the film when the collector tries to possess Geraldine's character and her rejection was spitting in his face. So to me that works. I thought that was cool. But the only disappointing part of how the collector is killed is when Geraldine spits in his eye and he bursts into flames. He then turns into this giant bat-like Jeepers Creepers looking monster and then explodes. So I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't show the powers or that monster for more time, or have the characters fight against that monster just to add another layer of depth to the darkness. So as a follow-up or a sequel to this movie, it would be fun to follow Geraldine's character, and the story can kind of be recycled in some way, but they might also use a new character that they can use flashbacks to Geraldine's character. If Jada Pinkett is not going to be involved with the movie, they can just use some kind of flashback to show what had happened to her and when she passed the key on. Or they can do something where all the keys are taken and they're living in the world of darkness, and the last few humans that are left have to then reconquer the demons and take back the keys. That would be kind of cool to see. And since they ended on a cliffhanger, when Geraldine steps on a bus and puts the blood seal down, as it comes to another stop, a guy walks up with a suitcase and looks at the door and says, "Nah, I'll wait for the next one." Even though he's in the middle of a desert and it could be hours or days until the next bus arrives, that kind of implies that there could be a sequel and that there are more collectors still on the hunt for this key. And I also think having a female lead as a collector in a follow movie would be a cool switch in dynamics, because Billy Zane carried this movie with his charisma, punchlines, and seriousness at times, but having a girl lead would have a different mode of seduction and temptation for the characters. And I think that would just be a cool change of scenery, and it would make the writers have a different way of approaching how the collector is going to manipulate the characters in order to get the key that it needs to bring upon the darkness. And also it would prove that the darkness can reside within either form. So I'm going to make a bold statement and say Billy Zane as the collector and Demon Knight, with his charisma and his ability to deliver lines for comedy and also seriousness, put him on par with Robert Englund and Freddy. Yeah, I said it. Up there with Freddy in terms of delivering lines, of puns, of entertainment, and delivering scares when they need to be. Now, unfortunately, Demon Knight doesn't have a franchise like Freddy does, but any one of those movies against this movie, Demon Knight will be just on par with any one of those movies, except for maybe the first one and A New Nightmare. Thank you for watching more GUTI, more gory. I hope you check out Demon Knight. I think you'll this movie because of the action, the scariness, the humor, the practical effects, and of course, the Crypt Keeper. You just might be entertained to death. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, all that hashtag, and please join me on my next episode. Take care.